research methods and design. This is the sixth lecture. We are going to talk about literature review. Literature review is very important section or chapter in your research. It's commonly the second chapter or section in your research. You tell us about the previous findings, the previous or existing knowledge and theories in ALT, in linguistics, in applied linguistics. So we will know about how to write a good literature review. Literature review is reviewing of the literature covering these things, but not necessarily in this order. You cover a review and critique of previous research in the same general area, shortcomings of methods or argumentation previously used, new areas to look at suggested by previous results, their findings, especially with respect to variables you are interested in. This should at every point be explicitly connected to your specific project. So in literature review, you review the previous studies. Again, the example of the language acquisition of children, the language acquisition of grammar by children. So I would expect in your literature review that you cover all the aspects of language acquisition and then all the aspects of a grammar and the acquisition of children. 3 topics should be covered here in your literature review. And then you need to connect these research with your research. Say, for example, X did a research on children while learning grammar, but he used questionnaires. Well, I don't want to use questionnaires because questionnaires are not going to give me enough information. I want to sit with the children and observe them, try to talk in their own language, interview them, and by this way I am going to get more valid and reliable results. So you see, you reviewed X research, you criticized the method he used, and then you said how you are going to do it. This is the essence of literature review. You review previous studies, you criticize them, and then you see, you tell us the connection between the previous studies and your research. The background review reads like an MA survey essay on some area of investigation, cataloging other people's studies with no comparison of them with each other or critique, and no use explicitly made of them to connect to your own work by showing what they suggested for it. So when you see the this exclamation mark means don't do it. This is something wrong, which contradicts this. This is the opposite of the previous idea. Yes, sometimes you just mention the studies. Ahmed did this, Pat did this, Yusuf did this, and Khalid did this, and that's it. No, this is just cataloging the previous studies. No, when you say Ahmed did this, explain, criticize, and tell us the connection between Ahmed's study and your own study. This is very important. If you don't do this, this is not literature review. Your literature review is going to be rubbish. Too broad. Need to focus rapidly on just what bits of articles and books are relevant to your study. Yes, when you say language acquisition, there are hundreds of books about language acquisition, hundreds of articles about language acquisition. You cannot include them in just 10 or 20 or 50 pages in your literature review. You need to be specific. Don't have a too broad literature review. You can, for example, in language acquisition, you define language acquisition, you mention the theories of language acquisition, and then you select the theory relevant to you. You don't need to explain everything. Don't make it too broad. Try to make it as relevant to your research as possible, as specific as possible. So again, this is wrong, and this is also wrong. You report previous work as important when actually it has no relevance to your own research, though it may be highly regarded in the field generally. Let's say that you mention Chomsky theory, and we know the Chomskyan's theories are very important in linguistics and highly regarded as important, but they have nothing to do with your research. Don't tell us about something very important in the field, in the language field, but it has nothing to do with your research. We acknowledge, we appreciate Chomsky, but Chomsky has nothing to do, maybe, has nothing to do with your piece of research about, for example, language acquisition or about English language teachers. You retail other people's criticism of each other's research, but do not resolve opposing views, argue your own view, or draw implications for your research. Let's say that you went to previous studies and found that Ahmed conflicts with Khalid's study. Ahmed says, well, children learn grammar faster. But Khalid is saying, no, children are not learning grammar faster. And you tell us about this story, but your position is not clear to us as readers. You need to have a standing position, either with Ahmed or with Khalid, or criticizing both Ahmed and Khalid and saying something different. You need to tell us. This is your job. Don't tell me the story of Ahmed and he's conflicting with Khalid and that's it. No, you need to. Either you support Ahmed or you support Khalid, or maybe you support both, or you criticize both. You need to tell us. This is very important. Review feels like the literature got on top of you rather than that you are on top of the literature, and it's too long, more than a third of the write-up. Yes, sometimes people find themselves drawn into literature review, and it's like the literature review on the top of them. They are not on the top of their literature review, mastering and controlling the literature review, because it is very, very long. And a good literature review would be a third of the write-up or of the research. Let's say that you are required to write 3,000 word research. A third out of 3,000 would be how many words? 1,000 words. So this is the ideal number of a good literature review, a third of the whole research. You mentioned the results of your own later research in your review. Well, this is a common mistake. This is a mistake that in the literature review you tell us the results. Well, you tell us about the conflicts between Ahmed and Khalid and say, well, Ahmed is wrong and Khalid is wrong because I found blah, blah, blah. No, this is not the place to tell us about your results. Say, for example, Ahmed is wrong, Khalid is wrong. I think the correct thing or the correct result is blah, 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 blah. Don't tell us, well, I found in this research, I found blah, blah, blah. This is not the place to talk about your results. You talk about, this is, since we don't have an exclamation mark, this is something recommended to do. You give us the theoretical background, models, theories that you are basing your research on. If you want to see more about the literature review, you can go to this website again and see how to do a very good literature review. This is a very good guide. Ostrich, you stick with one model you have learned about and don't cover the rival theories of or look in other disciplines that have something to say. Let's say that, well, because you like that model or that theory, you stick to it. And you don't even mention the other theories, that there are other theories in the field. Don't expose yourself as that you are not knowledgeable in your field. No, say, well, there are different theories. I'm going to stick to that theory because blah, blah, blah. And you should have good reasons. If you don't have good reason to stick to that theory, well, you are going to look very bad in front other experts and other researchers. You need to represent yourself in front of them that you are doing or you are knowledgeable about your field. Discussion of definitions of key terms, yes, especially the vague ones, communicative in ELT, function, strategy, task. You need to define them very clearly, because if you read about these terms, you will find hundreds of research about them. So you need to summarize all of these 100 research in a very nice way in your report or in your research. Again, we have exclamation mark, means something not recommended. You catalog a lot of people definitions of X but fail to show where they agree, differ, or which one you are adopting for your work and why. Let's say that you want to research strategy, student strategies while they are taking some tests. You need to define strategy, because I know the meaning of strategy, but there are hundreds of definitions in the literature about strategy. So don't just catalog the definition. Ahmed defined strategies like blah. Khalid defined strategies like blah. Cohen defined strategy like blah. Abdullah defined strategy like blah blah. Well, that's good. But then say, I will adapt this definition. I will adapt Cohen definition. I will adapt blah definition. I will adapt my own definition. I will take basis from this and this and this and that, and I will make my own definition based on these definitions. A review of methods used previously to gather relevant data. Yes, in your literature review the methods that other people's used. Review how they use questionnaires, how they use interviews, maybe think aloud, maybe observations, different ways to collect information. You need to review them, you define them, you tell us about the advantages and disadvantages of using this particular tool or method. Well, these are the most important structure of a good literature review. If you go to this website, which has a very good guide in how to write a literature review, it tells you about how not to write a literature review. It tells you about the problems, common problems students or researchers failing to fulfill while they are writing their literature review. So I hope I gave you some good background about how to write a literature review. Next lectures will continue the next chapters, inshallah. Thank you for listening, and wish you all the best.